was that during this process, the left really revealed that it both lost its mind and lost its principles. And I want to kind of start off, strangely enough, for this discussion with a quote from William F. Buckley, who's the kind of godfather of 20th century conservatism in the US. He said, "The definition of a conservative is someone who stands athwart history yelling stop." And I bring that up not because I have any sympathy for that worldview, but because I think that's a perfect definition of the left these days, especially in relation to the issue of Brexit. Because it seems to me that any left that's worth its name should be in favour of a couple of things. It should be in favour of freedom, it should be in favour of democracy, and it should believe in the capacity of ordinary individuals to shape their own lives, to shape their own politics, to make history in that old classical, radical left-wing sense. And to my mind, Brexit was all of these things. It was a huge blow to the status quo, it was something which completely went against what all of the elite wanted, and yet the left turned tail and ran away from it. They were standing athwart, shrieking stop. And I think that's something which was really a bit of a wake-up call. Because I think on the 23rd of June, the left, alongside all of the citizens in this country, were giving a tremendous opportunity. And in terms of the left, I think that was an opportunity to actually be about what it always said it was about. It was given an opportunity to strike out against a huge bureaucratic mechanism which was designed to keep people out of politics. It was given an opportunity to go against what all of the elite, from all of the political class, through to the capitalist class, through to the IMF, you name it, all of these people were standing up saying, "You British people, vote Remain or fire and brimstone is going to happen to you." They had an opportunity to strike out against that. They had an opportunity essentially to say that there are some things that are more important than the existence of this political union, the existence of this bureaucracy, short-term economic stability, principles, democracy. What people want is more important. They had an opportunity to do all these things, and they bottled it. And they bottled it in such a spectacular fashion that I think now is really a very important time for the left to actually address this. So, not only did, in the run-up to the referendum, vast majority of the Labour Party, many activists, even many people who were previously Eurosceptic, seem to turn around to this kind of Remain and reform idea, which is not only an impossibility, but just cowardly as far as I'm concerned. But they sided with the establishment. They became kind of radicals for the status quo, or socialists for technocracy. It was an absolutely bizarre state of affairs. And I think this even got slightly more absurd in the immediate wake after the referendum result, because you have all these people who for years have been saying there are some things that are more important than profit, people are more important, principles are more important. Then the pound suddenly drops and they say, "Look what you idiots have done to the market." So there was this absolutely bizarre kind of disjoint in terms of left-wing thinking in relation to Brexit. And I, like many other kind of left-wing Eurosceptics, left-wing Brexiteers, assumed that there would be a little bit of a reassessment of opinion in the wake of the Brexit vote. They would have recognised that something had gone a little bit wrong. And yet, if anything, I think a lot of the problems started to get worse. There's a lot of sections of the left started to double down. So first and foremost, you saw this incredible sneering at people who voted Leave. This very kind of ugly, anti-democratic broadsides against Leave voters. It was probably most pronounced in the kind of liberal left, the kind of centrist left. This idea that the Leave vote was only a kind of plebeian howl, that we didn't know what we were voting for, that we were all tricked, and that maybe, probably, potentially, we were all racist to boot. And then you had kind of Labourites who, having recognised that actually a lot of their supporters had voted Leave, basically said exactly the same thing, but just slightly euphemistically. So it wasn't that we didn't know what we were voting for, we were just lied to. So that was another way of dressing that up. It's not that we were racist, it was just in the words of Dynamic that we didn't like foreign-looking people on our streets. That's the way she kind of tied that one up. And even, I think, amongst those people on the left, within Labour, who weren't actively in that kind of Tim Farron style, trying to upend the vote, trying to avoid it, were nevertheless reflecting a deep scepticism about the point of actually involving individuals in politics in the first place. Things had gone that badly wrong, and the kind of reaction to it, I think, reflected their fear at that. And I think the second thing that flourished in the wake of the Brexit vote, and was kind of intensified after the election of that loon Donald Trump, was this kind of apocalyptic mindset you started seeing amongst people on the left. So suddenly you had all of this conversation about the 1930s. it's like the 1930s, you've got the populist right on the rise. If we don't do something quick, everything's going to go to a kind of hell in a handcart. Just after a vote on a political and bureaucratic union and whether we wanted to be a member of it or not. Suddenly it became this whole bizarre script about how we were all kind of plunging into hell. And what was incredibly striking about all of this, I think, was that what it revealed was how, on a very fundamental level, left-wingers and Labourites have become incredibly hostile to democracy. Because I genuinely think that no matter how you slice it, no matter how Brexit was often portrayed, no matter how Leave votes were often portrayed, it was fundamentally a question about democracy, about popular sovereignty, about accountability. And I think you see that reflected throughout all of the campaign, not necessarily the worst, dodgier ends of it, and also in terms of the results. If you look at the Ashcroft polls that come out after the EU referendum, the number one reason that Leave voters gave for voting Leave was the principle that laws that govern this country should be made in this country. Simple democratic principle. And I think what the both the kind of the left rallying behind the establishment, rallying behind the status quo before the referendum, and its kind of howls of rage afterwards, demonstrate that on a very fundamental level it become almost allergic to that concept. Because I think what that kind of sneering and that apocalypticism reveals is that there's two fundamental aspects of democracy, almost the two most important kinds in some respects, that the left has become terrified of. So first of all, it's just the idea of the demos, the people itself, the idea that people should have some sort of role in politics. I think what revealed in the wake of the Brexit vote was that there's a genuine scepticism about whether that's a good idea in the first place. And you saw it in this kind of long, drawn process through which all of these different allegations were being made. And I think that the thing I would say about this is, whilst I do think that the Brexit vote was a point at which a lot was revealed about the left, I think a lot of these trends existed for a very long time. One of the reasons that I think, especially a lot of people in the Labour Party, were so attached to the EU was that, particularly during its kind of wilderness years, when it wasn't in power, when it couldn't pick up support, the EU was seen as a means through which you could do politics by other means. And by other means, I mean not having to bother with the electorate, not having to bother with those idiots in the south in particular who keep voting Tory and we don't know why. And I think that throughout that process, the left has got more and more drawn away from democratic politics. They see the law, they see international institutions, they see various other things as a better way through which to bring about the society that they want. And I think that's fostered a genuine agitation towards individuals. And I think the second part of it, though, and the reason that we saw so much of this kind of apocalypticism in the wake of what was just a pretty clear democratic vote on membership of the European Union, was that I think that a lot of people on the left have become terrified of the thing that democracy was promised, which was not only representation, which might be accountability, but was change. The thing about democracy throughout history, the reason every movement to expand the franchise, to get more people involved in politics, terrified the elite, was partly because they didn't want idiots running politics and they didn't think they were up to it. That was obviously a huge part of it. But also because they were terrified of change. Elites are naturally interested in maintaining the status quo. It's what they like, it's what they profit off of. And I think one thing that's kind of happened over this process is we've seen that for some reason, the left, who should exist to instigate change in society with individuals, have become terrified of that concept. And the one thing I would kind of cite to sum it up, there was an article in the Guardian just before the referendum written by a former Eurosceptic, kind of social democrat media type who will remain nameless, but it was called The Left-Wing Case for Brexit. One day. And that, to me, those kind of two trembly words, which were in brackets, really summed up what the problem was that it was this terror, it was this kind of absolute terror about what would actually happen if you let people have a vote, have a say. In the course of his argument, he was just saying, of course, the European Union is anti-democratic, of course the European Union is anti-worker, of course it has all these horrendous things to do it, but if we leave now, Boris Johnson, so yes, Brexit, yes, democracy, but not if it emboldens a political party we don't like, not if those people who will suddenly be liberated by this will vote for something that we disagree with. And I think that really cut to the quick of it. And I think in a lot of those very histrionic reactions to Brexit, the talking up of the far right, far beyond its actual influence in this country as it goes. The fact that UKIP, which is the closest thing we have to it, has completely collapsed in the wake of the Brexit vote, I think puts paid to the idea that somehow people are goose-stepping through the streets. I think just speaks to the fact that the left have become so detached from ordinary people, from individuals, from their aspirations. They don't understand them. In fact, they fear them. And therefore, if there's ever actually an opportunity to give people more control, to give them more of a say, they can only assume it will lead to the worst possible thing imaginable. So just to sum up, what I think we saw in the wake of the Brexit vote was you had the left emerge as progressives terrified of change and terrified of us. And if the left is going to react to Brexit, it needs to work out how it ever got to that ridiculous position in the first place.